Years passed, and the galaxy slowly transformed under the leadership of the Coalition Council. The Zorathians' empire crumbled entirely, their remaining forces scattered or absorbed into the New Order. What had started as a desperate mission by John Harper to save his daughter became a movement that reshaped 3 star systems. Peace was fragile, but it held firm, thanks to the alliances forged during the rebellion. John stood on the observation deck of the asteroid base, now the capital of the Coalition, gazing out at the stars. It was hard to believe how much had changed since he first set out in Hope. Back then, he'd been an ordinary man from Maplewood, Ohio, just trying to bring Lily home. Now he was part of something far greater, a symbol of resilience and unity for countless beings across the galaxy. Lily joined him, her presence familiar and comforting. She had grown into a confident young woman, dedicating herself to diplomacy and science. Her work with the Coalition's research division helped ensure that humanity's genetic secrets would never again be exploited. "You're quiet," she said, leaning against the railing beside him. "Thinking about Earth?" John smiled faintly. "Yeah, sometimes I wonder what Mom and Karen are doing right now. If they ever look up at night and think about us." "They'd probably do," Lily replied softly. "But we've built a new home here, Dad. A better one." She was right. The Coalition wasn't perfect. Arguments still broke out among council members, and rebuilding shattered worlds took time. But it was a start. For the first time in generations, people lived without fear of Zorathian oppression. Trade flourished between planets, cultures exchanged ideas freely, and children grew up believing in a brighter future. One planet in particular held special meaning for John. Located near the edge of the 3rd star system, it was a lush world with rolling green hills and clear blue skies, not unlike Earth. When the council decided to name it after his hometown, John felt a lump rise in his throat. Maplewood became a beacon of hope, a reminder of where it all began. As the years went on, John stepped back from active leadership, leaving the day-to-day decisions to younger voices. He spent more time tinkering with Hope, keeping the old ship in working order even though it rarely left the hangar. Occasionally, he and Lily would take short trips together, exploring nearby moons or visiting liberated colonies. These moments reminded him of simpler times, when it had just been the 2 of them against the universe. Kayla often visited, bringing updates from other parts of the galaxy. Though their paths had diverged slightly, she remained deeply involved in Coalition politics. They shared a bond that transcended species. "You've done well, John Harper," she told him once, her glowing eyes filled with warmth. "Your spark ignited a fire that will burn for centuries." John chuckled modestly. "It wasn't just me. Everyone played their part." "That's true," Kayla agreed. "But don't underestimate the power of a father's love. It brought you farther than anyone thought possible." On quiet nights, John still thought about everything they'd been through. The battles, the sacrifices, the moments of doubt. But mostly, he thought about how proud he was of Lily. She had faced unimaginable horrors and emerged stronger, using her experiences to help others. Together, they had proven that even ordinary people could change the course of history. As he looked out at the endless expanse of stars, John felt a deep sense of peace. They weren't alone anymore. Humanity, and countless other species, had found its place among the cosmos. And though challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together, united by hope and determination. For John Harper, the journey had come full circle. From a backyard mechanic searching for his lost daughter to the architect of a galactic alliance, he had traveled farther than he ever imagined. Yet the most important thing hadn't changed. No matter where life took them, he and Lily were home, as long as they had each other. In the days that followed the fall of Cyran's stronghold, news of the rebellion spread quickly across the 3 star systems. The Zorathians' grip on power began to crumble as word of their leader's defeat reached the colonies under their rule. For years, these oppressed populations had lived in fear, too afraid to resist. But now, inspired by the actions of John Harper and his unlikely alliance, they started rising up. John found himself thrust into a role he never imagined, a symbol of hope. As survivors from the fortress joined forces with the rebels, stories of his bravery traveled faster than light. Captured Zorathian broadcasts were hacked and replaced with messages of defiance, urging others to join the fight. The relentless human, as some began calling him, became a rallying cry for those who dreamed of freedom. At first, John struggled to accept this newfound fame. He was just a mechanic from Ohio, not a hero or a leader. But Lily reminded him why it mattered. "It's not about you, Dad," she told him one evening as they sat together aboard *Hope*. "It's about what you represent. People need someone to believe in." With Kayla's guidance, John began working with the coalition to plan their next steps. They knew defeating Xiran was only the beginning. The Zorathians still controlled key territories, and without a unified effort, the rebellion risked falling apart. To prevent that, they needed to establish a council, a governing body made up of representatives from each species and colony, to guide the movement forward. Traveling from system to system, John met with leaders of various groups, many of whom had been fighting smaller battles against the Zorathians for years. At first, skepticism greeted him everywhere he went. Some doubted a human could lead such an effort, while others worried about trusting outsiders after decades of oppression. But John's honesty and determination won them over. He didn't pretend to have all the answers. Instead, he listened, shared his story, and emphasized the importance of unity. Lily accompanied him on these trips, her presence softening the mood during tense negotiations. Her ability to connect with others, whether humans or aliens, proved invaluable. Together, father and daughter became a team, bridging gaps between cultures and fostering trust among former enemies. One memorable meeting took place on a barren moon orbiting a red dwarf star. The settlers there lived in underground caves, hiding from Zorathian patrols. When John arrived, flanked by Kayla and a small escort, the colonists were wary at first. But when Lily stepped forward and spoke about her own captivity, tears filled their eyes. By the end of the visit, they pledged their full support to the rebellion. As alliances grew stronger, so did the coalition's resources. Ships, weapons, and supplies poured in from liberated worlds, bolstering their ranks. John worked tirelessly alongside engineers to upgrade *Hope* and other rebel vessels, ensuring they were prepared for future battles. Though exhaustion often weighed heavily on him, seeing the growing strength of their cause kept him going. Meanwhile, Lily continued to study the data recovered from the research station, uncovering more details about the Zorathians' experiments. She discovered evidence suggesting the aliens had been searching for something specific within human DNA, a genetic marker tied to psychic potential. This revelation shocked everyone, including John, who realized how close humanity had come to being exploited on a massive scale. By the time the coalition held its first official council meeting, the tide had turned decisively in their favor. Representatives gathered in a grand chamber built inside a newly liberated asteroid base, its walls adorned with symbols of unity. John stood before them, humbled yet resolute. "We've taken back our freedom," he said, his voice carrying through the room. "But we can't stop here. We owe it to everyone who suffered under the Zorathians to build something better, something lasting." Applause erupted, echoing off the metallic walls. For the first time in years, hope shone brightly across the stars. And though challenges lay ahead, John knew they faced them together, not as individuals, but as a united galaxy ready to shape its own destiny. The chamber erupted into chaos as both sides clashed in a desperate struggle for control. Commander Xiran moved with terrifying speed, his armored frame towering over the rebels. Energy crackled around him, and every strike from his weapon sent shockwaves through the room. John ducked behind a console, heart pounding as he tried to find an opening. Beside him, Lily worked furiously on her handheld device, trying to disable the fortress's central systems. "We can't keep this up forever," Kayla shouted, firing precise shots at the Zorathian guards. Her movements were fluid and calculated, but even she couldn't hold back the tide of enemies for long. John knew she was right. They needed a plan, and fast. Spotting a weak point in Siran's defenses, he signaled to Lily. "Can you overload that console?" he asked, pointing to a panel near the commander's feet. "It might distract him." Lily nodded, her fingers flying across the screen of her device. "Give me 10 seconds, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. John took a deep breath and stepped out from cover, drawing Siran's attention. The massive alien turned toward him, raising his weapon with a menacing growl. "You dare challenge me, human?" Siran sneered, his glowing eyes narrowing. "Yeah, I do," John replied, gripping his rifle tightly. He fired a burst of shots, forcing Siran to take cover behind a nearby pillar. It wasn't enough to hurt the commander, but it bought Lily the time she needed. A loud hum filled the air as the console sparked violently, sending arcs of electricity surging across the floor. Siran roared in frustration, momentarily distracted by the malfunctioning system. Seizing the opportunity, John charged forward, aiming for the exposed gap in the commander's armor. But Siran was faster than he looked. With a swift motion, the alien swung his arm, knocking John off his feet. Pain shot through his side as he hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the wind out of him. For a moment, everything went blurry and panic gripped him. If he failed now, all their efforts would be for nothing. "Dad!" Lily screamed, rushing toward him. "No, stay back," John yelled, struggling to get up. His vision cleared just in time to see Siran raising his weapon, ready to deliver a killing blow. Before the commander could act, Kayla leaped forward, tackling Siran with surprising strength. The two wrestled fiercely, exchanging blows that echoed through the chamber. Sparks flew as their weapons collided, lighting up the dim space. Seeing his chance, John forced himself to his feet and grabbed a fallen energy blade from the floor. With a yell, he lunged at Siran, driving the blade into the weak spot on the commander's armor. The alien let out a guttural scream, stumbling backward as blue energy coursed through his body. For a brief moment, Siran glared at John, hatred burning in his eyes. Then, with one final shudder, he collapsed to the ground, lifeless. The remaining Zorathian guards froze, unsure what to do without their leader. Sensing victory, the rebels pressed their advantage, disarming or subduing the enemy forces. Cheers broke out among the team as the battle came to an end. Breathing heavily, John leaned against a wall, clutching his side. Lily ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "Are you okay?" she asked, helping him sit down. "I'll live," he muttered with a weak smile. "We did it, kid. We actually did it." Kayla approached them, her expression softening as she looked at the father and daughter. "This is only the beginning," she said. "Siran's death will weaken the Zorathians' grip on these star systems, but there is still much work to be done." John nodded, knowing she was right. They had won a crucial victory, but the fight wasn't over yet. As other rebels began securing the fortress and freeing more prisoners, John allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. What started as a simple mission to save his daughter had grown into something far bigger, a movement to unite oppressed beings across the galaxy. Looking at Lily, he felt a surge of pride. She had faced unimaginable fear and come out stronger on the other side. Together, they had proven that even ordinary people could make extraordinary changes. As the dust settled and the survivors celebrated, John realized one thing. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were fighting for hope, for a future where no one would have to live in fear of tyranny. And for the first time in months, he felt truly hopeful about what lay ahead. The battle began with a deafening roar as ships from both sides clashed in the cold emptiness of space. Lasers streaked across the void, lighting up the darkness like fireworks. Explosions erupted in bursts of fiery light, sending shards of metal and debris spinning into the abyss. John gripped the controls of *Hope*. his knuckles white as he maneuvered the small ship through the chaos. Beside him, Lily held on tightly, her eyes wide but focused. "Stay close to the others." Kayla's voice crackled over the comm system. Her sleek fighter darted ahead, leading the charge toward the Zorathian stronghold. The massive fortress loomed ahead, bristling with weapons turrets and shield generators that glowed ominously against the blackness of space. John's heart raced as he followed her lead. He wasn't trained for combat, but desperation had sharpened his instincts. When enemy fighters swarmed around them, he relied on quick reflexes and sheer determination to evade their attacks. Using tricks he'd learned while driving race cars back on Earth, he spun *Hope* in tight circles, dodging blasts and returning fire with the retrofitted alien cannons mounted on the ship's hull. "Dad, watch out!" Lily shouted, pointing to a squadron of Zorathian vessels closing in fast. Without hesitation, John pulled up sharply, narrowly avoiding a volley of energy beams. Behind them, one of the rebel ships moved to cover their retreat, sacrificing itself to buy time for the rest of the fleet. John clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of every life risked in this fight. As they approached the stronghold, Kayla signaled for the next phase of the plan. A group of engineers aboard specialized ships broke off from the main fleet, targeting the shield generators with precision strikes. John joined the diversion team, drawing enemy fire away from the engineers. It was a dangerous job, but someone had to do it. Every blast that hit *Hope* rattled the ship violently, and warning alarms blared constantly. Still, John refused to back down. Finally, after what felt like hours, the shields surrounding the stronghold flickered and collapsed. Cheers erupted over the comms as the engineers confirmed their success. "We're in," Kayla announced. "All units, move in." With the defenses weakened, the rebel fleet surged forward, pouring into the fortress's hangar bays and corridors. John landed *Hope* near a docking platform, then grabbed a weapon scavenged from the base before stepping outside. Lily stayed close behind, clutching a small handheld device Kayla had given her, a tool designed to disrupt Zorathian security systems. Inside the fortress, the air was thick with tension. Strange noises echoed through the metallic halls, and shadows moved just beyond the edges of their vision. They encountered resistance almost immediately, facing groups of armored Zorathian soldiers armed with glowing blades and pulsating rifles. John fought alongside other rebels, using whatever cover he could find and firing carefully aimed shots. Though outnumbered, their determination gave them an edge. At one point, they stumbled upon a room filled with prisoners, humans and aliens alike, locked in glass cells similar to the ones where Lily had been held. Many were weak and malnourished, their eyes hollow with despair. But when they saw John and the rebels, hope sparked in their faces. "We're here to free you," John said firmly, smashing the control panel with the butt of his rifle. The cells opened automatically, and the captives spilled out, cheering and embracing each other. Some even joined the fight, picking up discarded weapons and following the rebels deeper into the fortress. Meanwhile, Kayla led a strike team toward the command center, where the Zorathians coordinated their operations. Breaking through layer after layer of defenses, they finally reached the heart of the stronghold, a cavernous chamber dominated by a towering holographic display. At its center stood Commander Xiran, the leader of the Zorathians, surrounded by a ring of elite guards. "You think you can defeat us?" Xiran sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You are nothing but pests." John stepped forward, his weapon raised. "Maybe we're pests," he replied, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "But even pests can bring down giants." With those words, the final battle began. Bullets flew and energy beams lit up the chamber as both sides fought fiercely. John kept moving, keeping Lily safe while searching for an opening to take down Xiran. The outcome hung precariously in the balance, but deep down, John knew they couldn't afford to lose. Not now. Not when so much depended on their victory. Kayla stood at the center of the gathering, her silvery skin shimmering faintly in the dim light. "Welcome," she said warmly, gesturing for them to follow. "Come. We have much to discuss." Inside the base, they were led to a large chamber filled with maps, holographic displays, and clusters of beings deep in conversation. Keel had explained that the Coalition had been fighting the Zorathians for years, but their efforts had been scattered and ineffective. The Zorathians controlled 3 neighboring star systems, using fear and brute force to maintain their dominance. However, recent events, including John's daring infiltration of the research station, had inspired whispers of rebellion among the oppressed colonies. "They see you as a symbol," Kayla told John as they reviewed a map of the region. "Your actions prove that even ordinary individuals can challenge the Zorathians. If we rally enough support, we might stand a chance." John rubbed the back of his neck, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of expectation. "I'm not a leader," he protested. "I just wanted to save my daughter." "And you did," Kayla replied firmly. "But now you represent something greater. You've shown others that resistance is possible. Will you let that spark die, or will you fan it into a flame?" Lily placed a hand on her father's arm, her voice steady. "We started this, Dad. We can finish it." After a long pause, John nodded reluctantly. "All right. What's the plan?" Kayla pointed to a heavily fortified planet marked on the map. It served as the Zorathians' primary stronghold in the nearest star system, a hub for their operations and a prison for countless captives. "If we strike here, we can cripple their power in this sector. But it won't be easy. Their defenses are formidable." John studied the map, his mind racing. "We'll need more than just guts. We'll need strategy and numbers." Over the next few days, the Coalition worked tirelessly to prepare. Scouts were sent to gather intelligence, while engineers retrofitted captured Zorathian weapons onto rebel ships. John and Lily threw themselves into the effort, learning as they went. For the first time since her abduction, Lily began to smile again, finding purpose in contributing to the cause. Together, father and daughter became symbols of resilience, inspiring others to join the fight. When the day of the attack finally arrived, John stood aboard Hope *, looking out at the fleet assembled around him. Hundreds of ships, crewed by beings from across the galaxy, waited for his signal. Taking a deep breath, he activated the comm system. "This is John Harper," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "Today, we fight not just for ourselves, but for everyone they've hurt, for every life stolen, every dream crushed. Let's show them we won't back down." As the fleet surged forward, John felt a mix of fear and determination. This wasn't just about saving Lily anymore. It was about giving hope to an entire galaxy. With Hope safely away from the research station, John focused on putting as much distance between them and the Zorathians as possible. The ship's engines roared as they sped through space, leaving behind the ominous shadow of the gas giant. Lily sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, wrapped in a blanket John had found in the storage compartment. She was still weak, but her color was slowly returning, and she watched the stars with wide, thoughtful eyes. "Are you okay?" John asked softly, glancing at her between checks of the navigation system. Lily nodded, though her expression remained serious. "I'm fine, Dad. Just trying to understand everything." She hesitated before adding, "Why did they take me?" John sighed, gripping the controls tighter. He didn't want to scare her, but he knew she deserved the truth. "From what I've pieced together, they think humans are special, like we have something they need. Something about our DNA." Lily frowned, clearly struggling to process the information. "But why me? There are billions of people on Earth." "I don't know yet," John admitted. "Maybe it's random, or maybe there's something specific about you. Either way, we're going to figure it out and make sure no one else gets hurt." Before Lily could respond, a soft beep interrupted them. A message appeared on the screen. Coordinates transmitted by Kayla, along with a brief note. "Safe zone ahead. Allies waiting." John exchanged a glance with Lily, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. They were no longer alone in this fight, and that thought brought a flicker of hope. The safe zone turned out to be an asteroid belt orbiting a dying star. Hidden within its rocky expanse was a makeshift base operated by the Scythes and their allies. As Hope approached, smaller ships emerged from the shadows, escorting them to a cavernous docking bay carved into one of the larger asteroids. When the airlock opened, John and Lily stepped out cautiously, greeted by a diverse group of aliens, all shapes, sizes, and colors. Some looked vaguely humanoid, while others were entirely unfamiliar, with multiple limbs or glowing appendages. John held Lily tightly, his heart pounding as he tried to process the moment. She was alive, weak and confused, but alive. Still, there was no time for celebration. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor outside, growing louder with each passing second. John quickly helped Lily to her feet, supporting her weight as they moved toward the exit. "Can you walk?" he asked, his voice low but urgent. Lily nodded, though her legs wobbled beneath her. "I think so," she whispered, clutching his arm for balance. Her voice was hoarse, and her skin felt cold to the touch, but she was determined to keep up. Seeing her strength gave John a surge of resolve. He wasn't losing her again. Not now. Not ever. They slipped out into the hallway just as a group of Zorathian guards rounded the corner ahead. Thinking fast, John pulled Lily into a nearby alcove, pressing them both against the wall as the creatures marched past. Their armor clanked loudly, and their weapons hummed with energy. One of them paused, tilting its head as if sensing something amiss, but after a moment, it continued on without investigating further. Once the coast was clear, John led Lily in the opposite direction, heading back toward the docking bay where Hope was being held. But getting there wouldn't be easy. Alarms began blaring throughout the station, red lights flashing along the walls. Clearly, someone had discovered their escape attempt. As they turned another corner, a new obstacle appeared, a sealed door blocking their path. John cursed under his breath and began searching for a way to open it. Nearby, a console blinked with alien symbols he didn't understand. Frantically, he pulled out the portable drive he'd taken from the derelict ship and plugged it into the system. To his relief, some of the fragmented data matched the station's interface, allowing him to override the lock. The doors slid open with a hiss, revealing a long catwalk overlooking a vast chamber filled with machinery. Before they could cross, however, a figure emerged from the shadows, a humanoid alien unlike the insect-like Zorathians. This one had smooth, silvery skin and large, glowing eyes that seemed to pierce right through John. It wore a flowing robe adorned with intricate patterns, and its presence radiated calm authority. "You should not be here," the alien said in perfect English, its voice melodic yet firm. John instinctively stepped in front of Lily, shielding her. "We're leaving," he replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. The alien tilted its head, studying them curiously. "You are human. Few of your kind venture this far into space. What drives you?" "My daughter," John said simply, gesturing to Lily behind him. "She was taken from Earth. I came to bring her home." The alien's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. The Zorathians see humans as tools, as subjects for their experiments. They do not value life as we do. It paused, then added, "I am Kayla of the Scythe people. We have watched their cruelty for many cycles. Perhaps you can help us end it." John frowned, unsure what to make of this sudden offer. "Help how? I'm just a mechanic from Ohio." Kayla smiled faintly, as if amused by his modesty. "You have already accomplished more than most would dare. You infiltrated their stronghold, retrieved stolen knowledge, and freed one of their captives, all while unarmed and untrained. Such determination is rare. If you wish to leave, I will guide you safely to your ship. But if you choose to stay, you may find allies among those who oppose the Zorathians." For a moment, John hesitated, His only goal had been to rescue Lily and return to Earth. But looking at the alien before him, and remembering the terrified faces of the other prisoners, he realized this fight was bigger than just him and his daughter. The Zorathians couldn't be allowed to continue their experiments unchecked. "We'll help," Lily spoke up suddenly, her voice steadier now. "If we can stop them, we have to try." John looked at her, surprised but proud. Nodding slowly, he turned back to Kayla. "Tell us what we need to do." With that decision, their journey took an unexpected turn. Guided by Kayla, they made their way through hidden passages, avoiding patrols and gathering supplies along the way. Kayla explained that the Cyriths were part of a loose coalition of species resisting Zorathian domination. Though scattered and outnumbered, they believed unity could tip the scales. As they reached the docking bay, John realized he wasn't just fighting for Lily anymore. He was fighting for something much larger. When they finally boarded *Hope*, John strapped himself into the pilot's seat, feeling a mix of fear and determination. The road ahead would be dangerous, but for the first time, he wasn't alone. With Lily beside him and Kayla promising to rendezvous later, he set a course away from the station, ready to face whatever came next. Minutes later, the sleek alien shuttle pulled alongside his ship. A bright beam of light enveloped Hope, pulling it toward the larger vessel. When the airlock opened, John stepped out cautiously, hands raised to show he wasn't armed. Two towering figures stood before him, clad in metallic armor that shimmered faintly under the dim lights. Their faces were hidden behind masks shaped like insect mandibles, and their bodies radiated an aura of menace. These were the Zorathians. One of them stepped forward, tilting its head as if studying him. "Explain your presence here," it demanded, its voice cold and sharp. "I'm looking for someone," John replied, trying to keep his tone steady. "My daughter. She was taken from Earth." The Zorathian paused, then gestured for one of its companions to scan John with a handheld device. After a moment, the creature nodded. "You carry stolen data. Why?" "It's not stolen," John shot back, anger creeping into his voice despite his best efforts to stay calm. "I found it on one of your ships. You left it drifting in space, broken and abandoned. Maybe you should take better care of your garbage." To his surprise, the Zorathian didn't respond with violence. Instead, it seemed intrigued, or perhaps amused. "You are clever for a human," it said after a pause. "But bravery will not save you. Come." John was escorted deeper into the shuttle, where he was locked in a small holding cell. Despite the situation, he couldn't help feeling a flicker of hope. Being captured meant he was inside their territory now, closer to Lily than he'd been since she disappeared. And if there was one thing John Harper excelled at, it was thinking on his feet. Later that night, while the guards outside his cell argued in their guttural language, John noticed something odd about the wall panels. They weren't solid metal. They looked weak, almost brittle. Remembering the welding torch he kept strapped to his belt, he quietly retrieved it and began working on the panel. Sparks flew as he cut through the material, careful not to make too much noise. Within minutes, he'd created a gap wide enough to slip through. Peering into the corridor beyond, John spotted another prisoner, a frail-looking human woman huddled in a corner. Her eyes widened when she saw him, but he pressed a finger to his lips to signal silence. "Where are they keeping the others?" he whispered urgently. They're experimenting on them," the woman stammered, tears streaming down her face. "Down the hall, third door on the left." John nodded grimly. He didn't have time to comfort her. He needed to move quickly. Creeping down the hallway, he avoided patrols and used makeshift tools to disable security cameras. When he reached the designated door, he hesitated only briefly before forcing it open. Inside, rows of glass pods lined the walls, each containing a person suspended in a strange green liquid. Scanning the room frantically, John's gaze landed on a familiar face. It was Lily. She was unconscious, her expression peaceful but pale. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by rage. Whoever had done this would pay. Using instructions from the stolen data files, John managed to drain the pod and free Lily. As she stirred awake, blinking groggily, her eyes met his. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, softly, she whispered, "Dad." "I'm here," he said, pulling her close. "Let's go home." But escaping wouldn't be easy, not with an entire station full of enemies between them and freedom. As Hope approached the gas giant, John felt a mix of excitement and dread. The research station loomed ahead, a massive structure floating in the planet's shadow. Its jagged design made it look like some kind of monstrous insect, with spindly arms reaching out into space. Lights blinked across its surface, and ships, clearly alien in origin, docked at various points along its hull. John swallowed hard. This wasn't just a lab. It was a fortress. He knew he couldn't storm the place head-on. Not only was his ship small and poorly armed compared to the sleek vessels surrounding the station, but he also had no idea what kind of defenses they might have waiting inside. Instead, John decided to observe from a distance, using the scanners on *Hope* to gather as much information as possible. He spent hours poring over readings, mapping out entrances, and studying patrol patterns. Every detail mattered if he wanted to get Lily back alive. But his careful planning was interrupted when an alarm blared suddenly in the cockpit. A red warning flashed on the screen. "Incoming transmission." Before John could react, a voice crackled through the speakers, not human, but guttural and mechanical, as though filtered through layers of static. "Unidentified vessel." The voice growled. "You are trespassing in restricted space. Identify yourself, or face immediate destruction." John's heart raced. He hadn't expected to be noticed so quickly. Thinking fast, he grabbed the portable drive he'd taken from the derelict ship and plugged it into the communication system. Hoping the fragmented data would confuse whoever was speaking, he hit the transmit button without saying a word. There was a long pause, followed by more garbled sounds. Then, finally, the voice returned. "Human craft detected. Stand by for boarding." Boarding? That wasn't part of the plan. Panic surged through John, but he forced himself to stay calm. If he ran now, he'd lose his chance to find Lily. Staying put meant risking capture, but maybe that wasn't entirely bad. If they brought him aboard, he'd be closer to her than ever before. Taking a deep breath, he powered down *Hope's engines and waited. The moment John activated the warp drive, the world around him dissolved into a blur of light and color. It was nothing like the movies. No smooth transitions or serene visuals, just chaos. The ship rattled violently, as if it might tear apart at any second, and alarms blared from every corner of the cramped cockpit. John gripped the controls with white-knuckled hands, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. For a few terrifying seconds, he wondered if he'd made a terrible mistake. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the shaking stopped. When John opened his eyes, he found himself staring out at a view that took his breath away. Stars stretched endlessly in all directions, brighter and more vivid than anything he'd ever seen through a telescope. Nebulas glowed in hues of purple and green, while distant planets loomed like jewels against the blackness of space. It was beautiful and completely overwhelming. He wasn't just leaving Earth behind. He was stepping into an entirely new reality. For the first time since Lily's disappearance, John allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. If this incredible journey was possible, maybe finding her wasn't such a long shot after all. Still, he knew better than to let his guard down. Space was vast and dangerous, and he had no idea what, or who, he might encounter out here. With shaky hands, he entered the coordinates from the transmission into the ship's navigation system and set a course. Hours passed in silence as *Hope* drifted through the void. John tried to stay focused, checking readings and making adjustments to keep the ship stable, but his mind kept wandering back to Lily. What was she doing right now? Was she scared? Hurt? Alone? The thought of her suffering tore at him, but he pushed the emotions aside. He couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. Not until he brought her home. Just as exhaustion began to creep in, something appeared on the radar, a large object drifting ahead of them. At first, John thought it might be an asteroid or some natural phenomenon. But as they got closer, details became clearer. It was a ship, or what was left of one. The hull was scorched and battered, its surface pockmarked with holes. Strange symbols were etched into the metal, unlike anything John had ever seen. Whoever, or whatever, had been aboard, they clearly hadn't survived. Curiosity outweighed caution, and John decided to investigate. Docking *Hope* to the derelict vessel was tricky, but he managed to secure a connection using magnetic clamps. Pulling on a spare welding mask to protect his face, he stepped through the airlock and into the eerie silence of the alien craft. The interior was dark, lit only by the faint glow of emergency lights flickering sporadically. Strange tubes and wires lined the walls, pulsing faintly with an otherworldly energy. As John moved deeper into the wreckage, he stumbled upon a room filled with consoles and screens. Most of them were dead, but one monitor flickered weakly, displaying fragmented text and images. Though he couldn't understand the language, certain patterns caught his eye. Maps of star systems, diagrams of human anatomy, and references to genetic experiments. A chill ran down his spine. Whatever these aliens had been working on, humans were involved somehow. Then he saw it, a photo buried among the data files. It was grainy and distorted, but there was no mistaking the face. Lily. She looked pale and frightened, her eyes wide with fear. John's stomach clenched. This wasn't just a random abduction. It was part of something bigger, something sinister. Clutching the image tightly, he downloaded as much information as he could onto a portable drive before heading back to *Hope*. Once aboard his ship, John sifted through the data, piecing together fragments of what he'd discovered. The aliens called themselves the Zorethians, and they believed humanity held the key to unlocking psychic abilities. They'd been experimenting on humans for years, capturing individuals like Lily to study their DNA. Anger burned inside John, but it was tempered by grim determination. Now he knew who had taken his daughter, and why. With renewed purpose, John plotted a new course based on the maps he'd salvaged. The Zorethians' main research station lay within reach, orbiting a massive gas giant in a nearby system. As *Hope* surged forward, John whispered a promise to himself and to Lily. "I'm coming for you," he said softly, "no matter what it takes." John sat in stunned silence, the sound of Lily's voice still echoing in his ears. The static-filled transmission was weak, but there was no mistaking it. It was her. His daughter, lost somewhere among the stars. For a moment, he felt overwhelmed by the enormity of what he'd just heard. How could this even be possible? Humans didn't travel to other planets. They barely understood how to leave Earth's orbit. Yet here was proof that Lily wasn't just missing. She was out there, far beyond anything familiar. Determined to figure out what was going on, John spent the next several days poring over every scrap of information he could find about space exploration and satellite technology. He scoured old manuals, watched grainy YouTube videos, and joined online forums where amateur astronomers shared wild theories about extraterrestrial life. Most people dismissed him as a conspiracy nut when he described hearing Lily's voice through the satellite dish. But one user named Astrofan87 offered some advice. If John wanted real answers, he needed to build something capable of reaching deep space. The idea seemed absurd at first. Building a spaceship, that was science fiction stuff, not something a regular guy like him could pull off. But as John thought about it more, he realized he had no choice. Governments weren't going to help him. They barely acknowledged his calls or emails, and private companies wouldn't waste their time on a grieving father chasing shadows. If anyone was going to save Lily, it would have to be him. Armed with little more than determination and a rusty toolbox, John began gathering parts for his makeshift spacecraft. He scavenged engines from junkyard cars, wiring from abandoned appliances, and metal sheets from construction sites. His backyard became a chaotic mess of half-finished projects and scattered components. Neighbors whispered behind his back, calling him crazy, but John didn't care. Every bolt he tightened brought him closer to finding Lily. One breakthrough came when he stumbled upon an obscure website dedicated to declassified government documents. Buried within pages of technical jargon was a blueprint for an experimental warp drive, a device designed to bend space and make faster-than-light travel possible. Though the design looked impossibly complex, John studied it relentlessly, teaching himself basic physics along the way. Slowly but surely, he adapted the plans to fit the limited resources he had. Karen stopped by one afternoon, concern etched across her face. "John, what are you doing?" she asked, staring at the strange contraption taking shape in the garage. "This isn't healthy. You need to let the authorities handle this." "The authorities haven't done a damn thing," John snapped, frustration bubbling over. "They think she ran away, Karen. But I know better. She's out there, and I'm the only one who can bring her back." Though Karen tried to argue, she eventually left without another word, shaking her head in disbelief. Alone again, John threw himself back into his work. Nights blurred into days as he welded, soldered, and tested each component until finally, after months of effort, the ship stood before him. A patchwork vessel held together by sheer willpower. He named it *Hope*, painting the word in bold letters across its side. But building the ship was only half the battle. John still needed a way to pinpoint Lily's location. Returning to the satellite dish, he rigged up a receiver powerful enough to detect faint signals from deep space. Late one night, as thunder rumbled in the distance, he picked up another transmission. This time, the message was clearer, containing not only Lily's voice, but also coordinates that matched the ones she'd written on the crumpled note. John stared at the numbers, his pulse quickening. It was real. All of it. The abduction, the alien technology, the unimaginable distances between worlds. It was all real. And now, armed with a cobbled-together spaceship and a burning resolve, he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. With trembling hands, John climbed aboard *Hope* and powered up the engines. As the ship roared to life, he took one last look at the quiet town he called home. Then, gripping the controls tightly, he set course for the stars, leaving Earth behind in search of the one person who mattered most. John Harper wiped the grease from his hands onto a rag and leaned back against the workbench in his garage. The late afternoon sun filtered through the dusty windows, casting long shadows across the cluttered space. It was just another ordinary day in the small town of Maplewood, Ohio. For John, life had settled into a predictable rhythm, fixing cars during the day and spending evenings with his teenage daughter, Lily. She was the light of his life, the one constant that kept him grounded after the messy divorce from her mother, Karen. Lily was different from other kids her age. While most teens spent their time glued to phones or hanging out at the mall, she had an insatiable curiosity about the universe. Her room was filled with astronomy books, star charts pinned to the walls, and a telescope she'd saved up for months to buy. Every clear night, they would sit together in the backyard, gazing at the stars while she rattled off facts about distant galaxies and nebulae. John didn't understand half of what she said, but he loved watching her eyes sparkle with excitement. That's why it felt so strange when Lily didn't come home from school one Friday afternoon. At first, John wasn't too worried. Teenagers sometimes lost track of time, especially when they were caught up in conversations with friends. But as hours passed, and she still hadn't returned, unease began creeping into his chest. He called her phone repeatedly, only to hear it ring unanswered each time. Finally, unable to shake the growing dread, he dialed Karen. "She's not with you?" Karen asked, her voice sharp with concern. "I thought she was staying late for that observatory trip." "What observatory trip?" John replied, frowning. "The field trip her science class took today," Karen explained. "Didn't she tell you?" John froze. No, Lily hadn't mentioned anything about a field trip. Panic tightened its grip around him as he hung up and rushed to the high school. When he arrived, the parking lot was nearly empty, save for a few teachers packing up their cars. One of them, Mrs. Peterson, recognized him and approached hesitantly. "Mr. Harper, I heard about Lily," she said softly. "We've been trying to reach you. She never came back from the observatory." The words hit John like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean, she never came back? Where is she?" Mrs. Peterson shook her head. "We don't know. The bus dropped everyone off except her. We assumed she stayed behind to ask questions about the telescope. But, well, no one saw her leave." John's mind raced. This wasn't like Lily. She was responsible, always letting him know where she was going. Something wasn't right. Back at home, he scoured her room for clues, flipping through notebooks and checking her laptop. That's when he found it. A crumpled piece of paper tucked under her mattress. On it were scribbled coordinates unlike any he'd ever seen, along with a single sentence written in her neat handwriting. Asterisk, Dad, if you're reading this, look to the stars. Asterisk. A chill ran down John's spine. What did she mean? Was this some kind of elaborate prank? Or worse, had someone taken her? Determined to find answers, John turned to the internet, searching tirelessly for anything related to the mysterious coordinates. Days turned into weeks, but nothing matched. Frustrated and desperate, he decided to dig deeper into places he'd never imagined exploring. One evening, as rain pounded against the roof, John ventured into the backyard to inspect an old satellite dish buried beneath overgrown weeds. It had been part of a government project decades ago, abandoned and forgotten. With tools in hand, he began dismantling the rusted equipment, hoping to uncover something useful. As he worked, static crackled faintly from the dish's receiver. Adjusting the dials, he suddenly heard a faint voice cutting through the noise. "Help me," it whispered, barely audible. Then, clearer this time, "Dad." It was Lily's voice. John's heart thundered in his chest. Somehow, impossibly, she was out there, beyond Earth, among the stars. And now, more than ever, he knew he had to bring her home.